This happened a few weeks ago. I'm Eli, a 35-year-old outdoor educator. I've spent years leading camps in remote areas, so I'm not new to the woods. I thought a weekend retreat with fellow instructors would help us unwind and bond over past experiences. Sitting by the fire felt comfortable. The flickering flames warmed our faces as we shared stories. I figured we were just there to relax. But I've never stopped thinking about it. That first night, as laughter filled the air, we began swapping ghost stories. Everything felt lighthearted until we heard it. A rustling from the bushes. At first I dismissed it. Probably just a raccoon or something. My friends went on laughing at the scary tales, but I felt this chill. It was strange, like something hovered around us. The laughter faded into awkward glances. The next day passed without incident, but something shifted in the air. When we gathered around the fire that evening, I noticed how the shadows seemed to deepen. Campers started sharing their odd encounters again. One spoke of a fleeting shadow that dashed across the clearing. Another recalled hearing whispers echoing through the trees. I could feel the tension growing. My heart raced while listening. There were moments when the forest felt too quiet, too watchful. I found myself sharing a story, too, about that time I heard a strange noise while camping alone. As soon as I mentioned the sound, the whole group fell quiet. Maybe it was just a coincidence, but I felt uneasy telling that memory. Why did it matter now? I wasn't sure, but I could see the outline of worried expressions around the fire. As the sun set deeper, I decided to check around our tents. I had to. It felt necessary. I found things, odd items scattered around. A broken watch, a torn page from a journal. I could hardly breathe. I picked them up and showed them to the group. They started to whisper about their own discoveries. Nothing made sense anymore. But the worst was yet to come. On that final night, I stumbled upon an old map tucked beneath the logs of our fire pit. The markings looked strange, almost familiar. I kept thinking about the stories, the shadows, and the whispers. I wanted to believe they were just tall tales, but as I studied the map, an overwhelming fear crept over me. I realized we weren't just telling stories anymore. I felt eyes on me. I turned to say something, but all that came out was a stammer. There was a noise behind me, sharper than the rest. I was certain something was there in the dark, hidden from sight but so close I could sense it. Then I noticed movement in the trees. I took a step back, heart pounding, and whispered to myself, "Please let it be nothing." Then I asked aloud, "What was that?" That's when I noticed they were all staring at me, faces pale. I felt my breath catch in my throat. There was nothing behind me, but there was definitely something watching us. The air felt heavier that night, charged with a sense of foreboding. I could see fear reflected on everyone's faces. Every little crack of a twig made us jump. It was like the forest had come alive, eager to share its secrets. I glanced at the map again, trying to focus, but the markings seemed to shift in the firelight. I had to know more. "Let's check the map," I suggested, forcing the words out despite my trembling hands. My voice barely broke through the anxious murmurings of the group. I hoped we could find something, anything, that would explain the unease gnawing at me. As I spread the map across my lap, Barry, one of my friends, drew closer. "What do you see?" he asked, squinting at the markings. I hesitated, trying to make sense of the jagged lines and small figures. It seemed to indicate several locations nearby, but what stood out was a large X marked deep in the woods. "What do you think that X is?" Jenna asked, crossing her arms. Her voice was steady, but I noticed the slight tremor in her chin. "I don't know," I replied, instinctively wishing I hadn't brought it up. "Maybe we should take a look in the morning." Before anyone could respond, a loud crash echoed through the trees. It sounded like something heavy had fallen. We all froze, wide-eyed. "It's probably just an animal," I suggested weakly, glancing toward the trees, but even I didn't believe my words. Ultimately, we decided to stay put. I wanted to argue for heading to the tents, but something told me we were safer together by the fire. Eventually, conversation trickled back, dull and uncertain. Hours later, as the moon climbed higher, I was lost in thought. I glanced out into the woods, feeling drawn to them. I couldn't shake the feeling that whatever was out there wanted us to find it. Compelled to act, I stood and said, "I'm going to check it out." "Eli, no!" Barry protested, rising from his seat. "You can't just—" "Stay here, I'll be right back." I hesitated at the edge of the clearing, the dark woods calling me. Part of me feared what I might find. The other part was desperate for answers. I felt everyone's eyes on my back as I stepped into the darkness, the shadows swallowing me whole. The forest closed in around me. Every sound felt amplified, my heartbeat the rustle of leaves. I followed a faint trail, my flashlight cutting through the thick darkness. As I walked deeper, the feeling of being watched returned, pressing harder against my shoulders. I turned off the light, listening. Then I saw it, a glimmer through the trees. I approached carefully, heart racing. As I drew closer, the air grew colder. I stumbled upon an old, weathered totem, crudely carved figures standing guard. A chill hugged my spine. That's when I heard it. A faint whisper, like a voice carried by the wind. "Help us!" I gasped, stepping back. I felt the ground shift beneath me. Panic surged as I turned to run, but not before I glimpsed movement behind the totem. I didn't stop to look again. I raced back toward the fire, but the whispers followed me, growing louder with every step. They seemed to mesh with the rustling leaves, urging me to return. I burst back into the clearing, eyes wide. "We need to leave, now!" Panic etched into their faces, but just as they began to rise, an unearthly scream pierced the night. The scream echoed, a raw sound that seemed to stretch through the trees and chill the very air around us. I felt my heart stop for a moment, frozen like the entire clearing. Everyone turned to me, eyes wide with fear. "What was that?" Barry gasped, his voice barely a whisper. I don't know," I stammered, feeling my throat dry up. The whispers that I had heard were now mingling with the memory of that terrible scream, wrapping around my thoughts like ivy on an old tree. "We need to move, right now." "Move where?" Jenna shot back, panic in her voice. "It's pitch black out there." Another scream echoed, this one closer, more desperate. I could see the sheer terror on my friends' faces. Their hesitation was clear. They wanted to stay, to protect one another, but the weight of fear bore down on us. "Let's stick together," I urged, even though my own resolve cracked. "If we head back to the path, we can make it to the car." "Eli, it's dangerous," Barry argued. "What if whatever that is follows us?" I opened my mouth, prepared to counter his point, but the next scream silenced me. It was a wail of anguish that seemed to hang heavy in the air. It sounded human, but distorted, like someone in extreme pain. "Okay, fine," I shouted, trying to sound more confident than I felt. "We'll stay together, but let's keep the fire going." I hurried to toss more wood onto the flames, hoping the light would ward off whatever prowled outside. As I knelt by the fire, I thought of the totem and the whispers. Something was out there, waiting in the shadows. I clutched the map in my hand, the X marking its secrets in stark black ink. Was that the source of this terror? A rustle came from the edges of the clearing, causing me to bolt upright. The group flinched, now huddling closer together. "What was that?" Jenna asked, her voice trembling. "I don't know. It sounded like something moving," I replied, scanning the tree line. "Should we—" Before I could finish, something broke through the underbrush, stumbling into the light. My breath caught in my throat. It was a deer. But it wasn't a normal deer. Its eyes glowed a sickly yellow, and its legs were trembling. It looked terrified, like it had run for its life. It darted past us deeper into the woods, and I felt the collective release of breath among my friends. "Wildlife can be strange out here," Barry said, though his voice wasn't convinced. I shook my head. That's not just wildlife. Something's not right. The whispers were louder now, seemingly emanating from the forest itself. They pulled at my mind, urging me to turn back. I struggled to suppress the rising panic. We can't wait here for whatever that is, I said. Let's get to the path. As we began moving, the air thickened around us. The whispers turned into distinct voices, each one pleading, "Help us!" The sound wrapped around us, drowning out the familiar rustle of leaves and the soft crunch of footsteps. "What do they want? Who are they?" Jenna whimpered, looking back. I didn't know how to answer. Then a shadow shifted from behind a tree, and I felt dread flood through me. "Keep moving!" I shouted, shoving the others forward as I glanced back, searching for what had stirred. But the darkness swallowed it up again. Just as we reached the edge of the clearing, we heard it, a voice harsh and low. "You shouldn't have come. Leave now, or you will join us." I turned back to see what had spoken, but all I saw was a flicker in the darkness. My chest tightened at the horror of it all. We were far from safe, and whatever lay in the woods wasn't finished with us yet. We stumbled out of the clearing, hearts racing. The dense trees loomed around us, their twisted branches reaching like skeletal fingers. I wished for daylight, for some sign of safety. Instead, all I saw was the oppressive darkness that felt alive, pressing down on us. "Are we going the right way?" Jenna faltered, glancing over her shoulder. "What if we get lost?" "Just follow me," I replied, trying to mask my own fear. The path was faint, but I pushed forward, determined to keep us together. I could still hear those voices, any hope of escape seeming dimmer with each step. As we walked, a shiver crawled up my spine. It wasn't just the cold. Something was watching us. I could almost feel it lurking just out of sight. I wanted to believe it was just my imagination, but the way the shadows flickered made me doubt myself. Then Jenna cried out. A tree root had snagged her foot, and she tumbled to the ground, scraping her palms. "I'm fine," she gasped, but I could see the tremor in her hands as she pushed herself up. "Let's rest for a second." I tried to keep my voice steady, but the urgency gnawed at me. "No, we can't stop," Barry protested. "We should keep moving." I couldn't blame him. I thought of the voice that had warned us, of the deer with its glowing eyes. The longer we lingered, the more likely we'd attract whatever was hiding in the shadows. "Just a minute," I insisted, my own nerves fraying. As we paused, the whispers intensified. I strained to decipher them, drowning out the sounds of our heavy breathing. "Help us, help us," they pleaded. A haunting chorus that seeped into my bones. "Do you hear that?" Jenna asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Yes," I admitted, the chill running deeper. "It sounds like people?" "People," Barry echoed, glancing around, eyes wide. "We can't help anyone. We need to help ourselves." I was about to respond when the air changed. The whispers grew desperate, and then, suddenly, chaotic. A crash resonated from the trees behind us. Then we saw it. A figure, a shadow darting between the trees. My stomach dropped. "Run!" I shouted, instinct taking over. The fear propelled us forward, each footfall echoing on the uneven path as we tore into the darkness. Branches whipped at my face as I tried to hold onto the map, my lifeline. Suddenly Barry stumbled, his foot catching on something. I turned back just in time to see him fall, his scream swallowed by the night. I gritted my teeth, fear clawing at my chest. "Go!" he yelled, panic lacing his voice. I hesitated, but the sight of the figure drawing closer stole my breath. I felt torn, but the reality of survival eclipsed everything else. I ran, pulling Jenna with me. "Eli! We can't leave him!" she cried. "We have to keep moving. He'll find his way," I shouted back, trying to keep my own fear from taking over. But even as I said it, I didn't believe it. When we reached a slight rise, I dared to pause, looking back. Silence now lay thick in the air, pressing against my ears. Had Barry gotten back up? I forced myself to breathe, but the question clawed at my mind. And then the whispers returned, now sounding urgent. Join us. I turned to Jenna, her face white as she leaned against a tree. What does that mean? She whispered. Suddenly, the ground beneath us shifted. I stumbled back, watching as the dirt crumbled away at the edge of the rise. My heart raced as I took a step forward to grab Jenna's arm. Let's get back on the path, I commanded, but the earth rumbled again. That's when I saw it. A piece of that totem sticking out from the ground, but something was off about it. My blood ran cold as I realized there were shapes buried beneath the soil. We need to leave, now! As I turned to flee, I caught a glimpse of movement from the corner of my eye. It was Barry, but the way he stared at us sent a chill through my bones. Then everything went dark. I woke to the sound of rustling leaves and the distant monotone whisper of trees swaying in the wind. My heart hammered in my chest, panic flooding my senses. It took a moment to remember where I was, lost in the forest, with Jenna somewhere near me and Barry behind. Jenna? I called softly, my voice trembling. I struggled to stand, my limbs feeling heavy and disoriented. Glancing around, I saw nothing but shadows stretching into the dark. The sense of dread crawled back, wrapping itself around my throat. Eli? Her voice cracked, barely audible. I'm here, I answered, relief and fear mingling in my chest. She emerged from the trees, her hair wild and eyes wide. What happened? Where's Barry? I don't know. The reality of it hit me like a punch. I think he might still be back there. But he called for us. He told us to go. Jenna shook her head, dread painting her features a shade paler. We needed to move, to leave the darkness behind, but every instinct told me we were not alone. I glanced back into the thick underbrush, as if expecting to see Barry's familiar figure step out. Instead, only the oppressive silence greeted me. We can't just stand here, I said. We have to find a way out. Instinct kicked in, urging me to push forward. As we walked, an eerie stillness settled over the woods, swallowing any sounds of nature. The whispers had faded, leaving a void that felt heavier than before. I kept my eyes focused ahead, but fear gripped my gut like a vice. I wished for the soft sounds of a brook or the chirping of crickets. Just as hope began to flicker dimly, we came upon a clearing. Moonlight spilled onto the ground, revealing a circle of white stones arranged in an odd pattern. My pulse quickened again. It looked familiar, like the markings from an old book I had skimmed through. Ritualistic, perhaps, but I couldn't remember the details. "What is this place?" Jenna asked, her voice barely a whisper as she stepped into the clearing. I had no idea, but my instinct screamed at me to turn back. "We shouldn't be here," I said, a chill coursing down my spine. "Let's keep moving." But before I could take a step, something rustled in the underbrush nearby. It was soft, but distinct, like footsteps creeping closer. My breath caught. We weren't alone. "Eli," Jenna's voice quivered. I could see it now. A figure emerging slowly from the foliage, a man, disheveled and wild-eyed. "You shouldn't have come here," he rasped, his voice hoarse and pleading. "They will take you too." "What? Who will take us?" I demanded, my heart racing. "The spirits of this forest," he said, glancing over his shoulder as if fearing something would spring from the trees. "They can't let you leave. You must join them." "Barry." Jenna's voice dwindled, horror dawning on her face. I felt the walls closing in. "No, we have to get away, now." But as I moved to turn, the shadows shifted, encroaching on our path, darkness swallowing the moonlight. The man pointed toward the trees, his hands trembling. "You can't escape. They're already here." A scream pierced the night, echoing in the clearing, and I recognized it instantly. It was Barry. "Run!" My voice erupted, the instinct to survive surging through me. Jenna grabbed my hand, and we dashed into the shadows as the unearthly whispers rushed back, now stronger, now insistent. "Join us! Join us!" Whatever was lurking at the brink of our vision was closing in fast. There was no time to linger. But desperation fueled my legs until I could no longer tell where I was running, just forward. I had no idea how far we ran, but the darkness felt endless. Trees blurred past us, their twisted branches reaching out like fingers. Each rustle sent spikes of terror through my body. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was just behind us, chasing us, waiting for the right moment to strike. "Eli!" Jenna yelled, her voice thin and strained. "What do we do?" "Keep running," I shouted back, not even glancing at her. My focus was solely on the path ahead, an invisible beacon guiding our way. The sound of our footsteps seemed to echo, mixing with the whispers that clawed at the edges of my consciousness. Suddenly, I skidded to a halt. There, ahead, the trees parted to reveal a foggy path that seemed to glow faintly. I had never seen anything like it. Wisps of fog danced along the ground, swirling and twirling like spirits beckoning us forward. "Eli!" Jenna tugged at my arm, pulling me away. "We can't go that way. It looks wrong." I hesitated. Part of me wanted to stand at the edge and peer into the mist, but I knew we had to keep moving. "We need to find a road or a stream. We can't stay in these woods." Without another word, we veered off the foggy path, retracing our frantic steps. The screaming and whispers faded only slightly, but I could feel the tension thickening in the air. Every so often I glanced over my shoulder, half expecting to see something lurking there, but nothing ever appeared. Then we stumbled upon a strange, broken-down cabin, tucked away in the trees. It looked as if it hadn't been touched in years. The wooden walls were covered in moss. The windows were cracked, and the door hung slightly ajar. "Do you think anyone is inside?" Jenna asked, glancing warily at the place. "It could be safe, or it could be worse," I said, my voice low. My instincts screamed at me to keep moving, but fatigue was setting in. "We can check for supplies, or even a phone." "Eli, we don't know what's out here," she pressed, her fear evident. I knew she was right, but I also felt that if we stayed out in the open too long, we might end up trapped or worse. "We'll go in fast. If we see anything, any sign of trouble, we get out, okay?" Reluctantly, Jenna nodded. I took a deep breath, then stepped inside. The air was stale, thick with dust and something else I couldn't quite place. I flicked my phone light on, the beam cutting through the gloom. Shadows danced around us as I moved deeper into the cabin. The walls were lined with old photographs, their faces worn and faded, staring back at me. They looked haunted. "Eli, look!" Jenna pointed to a corner where a small table sat. A lantern lay on it, the glass cracked but still intact. We might be able to light this. It could help. Just then, we heard it, a soft creak behind us. I spun around, my heart racing again. My breath caught in my throat. That's when I saw it, a dark figure looming by the doorway, its form barely visible in the dim light. My heart dropped as icy fear coursed through me. "Jenna," I barely whispered. "Run!" But as we bolted for the exit, I knew this was just the beginning of something far worse. I burst through the door and sprinted into the night, the cool air stinging my lungs. Jenna was right beside me, her breaths rapid and shallow. We didn't dare look back, not even for a second. The cabin loomed behind us, a dark spot swallowed by the shadows. "Where do we go now?" she gasped, her eyes wide with panic. "Just keep moving," I urged, pushing myself forward. The woods stretched before us like a maze, branches snagging at our clothes as we rushed through. I wished for any sign of a road, anything except this suffocating darkness. Our footsteps echoed against the bark of the trees, mixing with whispers that seemed to taunt us from all sides. I could still feel that dark figure lurking in my mind, a shadow I wished would disappear with the dawn. Suddenly a piercing scream echoed through the woods, sending chills racing down my spine. Jenna clutched my arm, her nails digging into my skin. "What was that? We have to hide." "No time," I snapped back. "We keep going." In the distance, I spotted a faint light flickering among the trees. Hope bloomed in my chest. "Come on!" I grabbed Jenna's hand and we pushed toward the glow. As we got closer, the light pulsed rhythmically, guiding us through the underbrush. It appeared to be a fire. Campers. I couldn't believe our luck. Maybe they could help us. We broke through the last of the trees and stumbled into a clearing. A small group was gathered around a fire, their faces illuminated with an orange glow. They turned to look at us, surprise and concern evident on their faces. "What happened?" one of them asked, standing up. He was tall, with a rugged face. I opened my mouth to explain, but the moment I started, I felt the weight of dread settle back on my shoulders. "We were just attacked." Before I could finish, their expressions shifted. A woman among them, her dark hair pulled back tight, looked over my shoulder, her eyes widening. "Get down!" she shouted, and the group instinctively ducked behind the logs surrounding the fire. A low growl rumbled from the tree line, followed by a series of quick, sharp snaps. I turned, heart racing, but I saw nothing. "What is it?" I whispered, terror creeping back in. The tall man lifted his head, listening. "Whatever it is, it's close." Jenna was shaking beside me, and I squeezed her hand reassuringly, though I wasn't sure if I believed my own bravado. "We can't stay here," I said, my voice barely more than a whisper. "What do we do?" That's when I heard it again. A rustling, purposeful and close. My heart dropped. We weren't safe. The campers exchanged looks filled with fear and uncertainty. One of the women stood up slowly, scanning the tree line. "We have to move to the truck. It's safer there." "Can you fight?" the tall man asked me. "Do you have anything?" "Just my phone," I replied, feeling exposed and helpless. "Let's go," he commanded, each word laced with urgency. As we bolted towards the trees, footsteps thundered behind us, the growling now unmistakably close. My heart threatened to burst from my chest, but just before we could break into a full sprint, the world around us plunged into darkness, the fire extinguished, leaving us enveloped in black. "This way!" I shouted, but my voice was swallowed by a sudden, eerie silence. We stumbled, disoriented. Then I heard a low growl, unmistakably closer than before. We weren't just running from shadows, something was hunting us, and we had no idea what it was. The panic surged back as I realized we might not escape. The blackness was complete. My heart raced, and every muscle tensed, ready for flight or fight. "Jenna, are you there?" I nearly shouted, but it came out as a hoarse whisper. "I'm here," she gasped, her voice trembling. "What do we do?" The tall man moved closer. "Listen," he hissed. "We need to find cover." I could still hear the growl echoing through the trees, a deep sound that made my skin crawl. There was no way we could stay out in the open. I remembered the logs we had seen around the fire, thinking they could provide some shelter. "Over there," I pointed, but before we could make a move, a flash of movement darted past us. I froze, instinctively pulling Jenna back. "Did you see that?" "Yes," she whispered, panic rising in her voice. "What was it?" "Stay close," the tall man said, guiding us through the darkness. The low growl returned, vibrating through the air, growing louder, closer. I didn't want to think about what was hunting us. We crouched by the logs, all pressing against each other. The campers peered into the blackness, eyes wide with fright. I felt Jenna's fingers tremble in mine. "What do we do now?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Keep quiet," the woman with dark hair instructed. "If it's a predator, we can't give away our position." I wished for a hint of light, anything to chase away the horrifying shadows. Then suddenly a beam cut through the night, illuminating the clearing. I squinted, but it quickly faded. "What was that?" I breathed, unsure if I imagined the light. "It looked like a flashlight," one of the campers said. "Maybe it's someone searching for us." I wanted to believe it, but that growl reminded me of our danger. "Where's the truck?" I asked, hoping someone would know. "I think it's over that way," the tall man said, gesturing into the darkness, and then, without warning, the growl morphed into a snarl. My breath caught. "It's coming!" I gasped, and the group flinched. In a split second, the creature emerged from the shadows, a hulking figure with glistening eyes. Fear paralyzed me for a moment as it lunged forward, teeth bared. "Run!" the tall man shouted, breaking my trance. I grabbed Jenna's hand and pulled her. The others jumped up, scrambling in different directions, a wave of panic pushing us all. We dashed toward the tree line, heart pounding, adrenaline fueling my every step. I had no idea where I was going, but behind us the growl intensified. The air was thick with an impending sense of doom. I could almost feel its breath on my back. Then I spotted something ahead, a large, dark shape that looked like a vehicle. "The truck!" I yelled, my hope reigniting. But just as we reached it, I skidded to a stop, my heart sinking. The truck doors were wide open and I could see nothing inside. "Is anyone in there?" Jenna whispered, fear creeping back into her voice. "I don't know," I said. But before I could say more, a chilling howl echoed through the woods, piercing through the trees. "Get in!" the tall man yelled, his voice commanding as he pushed us forward. I hesitated for just a moment, dread pooling in my stomach. Whatever was out there was closing in, but as I stepped toward the truck, the rustling intensified. I thought I saw the glint of teeth and eyes among the shadows. I climbed into the truck and turned around, ready to shout for the others. That's when I noticed the back seat was empty. "Where is everyone?" I screamed, panic rising within me, but a terrified cry erupted outside just then. Someone was still out there. I whipped around in the truck, scanning the darkness for any sign of our friends. "They're coming! Somebody, please!" I shouted, but the sound of my own voice felt swallowed by the surrounding silence. I could still hear that haunting howl echoing from somewhere beyond the trees, and it sent chills down my spine. "Jenna, get down!" I urged, ducking low in the front seat. I pressed my hands against the cold dashboard, feeling the hum of the engine beneath me. I could almost imagine the others, stumbling and lost out there, the creature lurking close by. "Where's the tall man?" Jenna whispered, panic in her voice. "He said he would keep everyone together." "I don't know," I admitted. My heart raced and dread began to coil in my stomach. "We can't just sit here." Jenna trembled beside me, her hand gripping tightly onto my arm. "What if it comes for us next?" "Then we'll fight," I said, not knowing if I believed my own words. I glanced at the door, almost expecting the beast to burst through at any moment, its eyes glowing like fire in the dark. Just then, I heard running footsteps approaching, followed by frantic voices. "Over here! In the truck!" I shouted, relief rushing through me. Two figures emerged from the trees. One was the woman with dark hair, her face pale and streaked with dirt. The other was a young guy I didn't recognize, completely out of breath. "Is everyone okay?" he asked, glancing nervously around the clearing. "No," I shot back, my heart pounding. "Where's the tall man and the others?" "We lost them," she gasped, her voice shaking. "We need to get out of here, now!" "What about the headlights? If we turn them on, we might attract it," the guy said, glancing at the dashboard. "No!" Jenna and I said at the same time, our fear of being exposed too great. The woman cringed. "We can't just sit around. What if it follows us here? We need a plan." Before I could respond, I spotted movement in the shadows. My breath caught in my throat as the silhouette materialized into something monstrous, a hulking shape with gleaming eyes. "Get in, now!" I commanded, throwing open the passenger door. I climbed into the back seat, and Jenna followed closely behind, her face pale. The woman and the guy jumped in just as the creature lunged toward us, snarling. The back doors slammed shut, trapping us in the dark vehicle. Start it, I urged, my heart racing in sync with the terror surrounding us. The guy fumbled with the keys, his hands shaking as he turned them in the ignition. The engine sputtered but didn't catch. My pulse raced as the creature flailed around the truck, its haunting growl echoing in my ears. "Come on!" I yelled, panic flooding me. "Hold on!" he shouted again, turning the key once more. This time the truck roared to life. "Go! Go!" I shouted. But as we lurched forward, I swore I saw another figure sprinting toward us from the trees. "Is it them?" Jenna cried, her voice filled with desperation. I can't tell," I shouted back, fear clawing at my throat. As I glanced in the rearview mirror, the truth hit me like a punch to the gut. It wasn't just one creature coming for us. There were several. The headlights illuminated their eyes, and they were closing in fast. "Drive! Drive!" I screamed, feeling myself tremble. But before the guy could hit the gas, I caught sight of the towering man with a familiar face emerging from the shadows behind the creatures. My heart twisted. But he wasn't alone. 2 other figures followed closely beside him, and in that moment, I realized we were out of time. The night was about to get even darker. The truck surged forward, tires screeching against the forest floor as we broke through the clearing. I knew we needed to get away from whatever haunted this dark stretch of woods, but the sight of the man and familiar faces haunted my thoughts. I pressed my foot against the floor, urging the driver to go faster, the growls of the creatures intensifying behind us. "Eli!" Jenna screamed from the back seat. "What are we doing? What's happening? Who are they?" "I don't know," I cried back, trying to swallow the knot in my throat. I felt dizzy with the uncertainty. Were those our friends? Had they become part of the forest's twisted grip? The tall man in the distance, his shape now illuminated by the flicker of the headlights, seemed to beckon us with a shivering desperation. But alongside him were figures I couldn't quite make out, shadows that melted into the night. I stole a glance back. The creatures had formed a wall of feral eyes, glowing with malicious intent. "Drive! Don't stop!" the woman shouted while looking out her side window. In my gut I felt a gnawing pull, urging me to turn back. What if they were still untainted? What if they needed help? But I quickly squashed that idea, remembering the screams and whispers that had filled the woods, urging us to join them. Just as we broke through the barrier of trees, a deafening roar echoed behind us, shaking the truck. My heart raced as every instinct screamed to put distance between us and whatever was hunting us. The road was unclear, disappearing into thick woods on either side. "Eli, look!" Jenna yelled, pointing ahead at a faint glow marking the horizon, something resembling civilization. "A light! We might be close to a town!" Before I could answer, a massive form crashed into the back of the truck. We jolted forward, the impact sending shockwaves through our bodies. "Keep driving!" I shouted, the adrenaline-fueled urgency wrapping around us like a vice. The driver punched the gas, the truck roaring while the darkness closed in. A flicker of hope ignited within me. Whatever those creatures were, I refused to let them claim us, to let them pull us into that nightmarish abyss. But as we barreled down the road, I glanced back at the tall man once more. The familiar face, barely recognizable, and I couldn't shake the sense that we were leaving something behind. With every turn, the light in front of us glowed brighter, illuminating the surroundings just enough to make out the contours of a building. A cabin or a lodge, perhaps. It felt like a haven. Lights flickered in the windows, promising safety. But a wave of unease washed over me. What if the darkness had tainted that too? "Do you think we should check for help?" Jenna asked, her voice trembling but laced with hope. "Only if it looks safe," I replied, unsure. "We need to be careful." The truck screeched to a halt in front of what looked like an empty lodge, its presence eerie in the night. The driver jumped out, peering inside the windows, but froze when he heard the low growls approaching. We all scanned the woods, feeling the tension rise as shadows melded between the trees. "This isn't good," I muttered, glancing toward the dark tree line, every instinct urging me to move. "We need to decide quickly." Just then, the tall man appeared at the edge of the clearing, his eyes wide, desperate. "Help us!" he gasped, reaching out as if he had been touched by whatever darkness ruled this forest. "Get inside, now!" I shouted, my heart pounding. The urgency forced me forward, pulling Jenna and the others into the lodge. As we rushed through the doors, the air thickened with the weight of what we had left outside. We turned to shut the door just as the growling grew louder, a cacophony of twisted voices demanding our attention. It felt as though the trees themselves were alive, yearning for us to rejoin their terrible embrace. Are they coming?" Jenna whispered, eyes darting between the windows. "I don't know," I murmured back, fear clinching my throat. "Just stay quiet." The lodge creaked around us, echoes of our panicked breaths reverberating in the silence. The towering shadows from the forest danced outside, edging closer as if testing the boundaries of our flimsy haven. A shiver ran down my spine, but I couldn't look away. We barricaded the door and I nearly sank to the floor, breathless with both physical and emotional exhaustion. "What now?" A voice trembled from the group as we huddled together. "The light. It's a signal," the woman said quietly, staring at the nearby windows. "If we can keep it bright, we might be able to hold them off." "But what if we're wrong?" the young man protested. "We have no idea what we're dealing with." Before anyone could respond, the light flickered. I turned just in time to see silhouettes passing just beyond the threshold, figures gliding into our world. "They're coming," I stated, a cold realization settling in. Jenna clutched my arm, silent tears falling down her face. The weight of our choices hung heavy, and the whispers cut through the air, each one echoing a plea, a promise, and a curse. "You shouldn't have come," a faint whisper echoed through the cabin. I clenched my fists, feeling the weight of unanswerable questions and the very real threat that hovered outside, claws scraping the timber. This forest, this night, did they hold the threshold between life and something darker? I looked into Jenna's terrified eyes, wishing I could reassure her, but nothing felt certain anymore. I still think about it sometimes, wondering if our choice had sealed our fate or if we could find our way back to the light. A task that felt impossible in the face of such profound darkness. What if we were never meant to escape? I still don't know. I moved to another town after that weekend, but the woods always linger in my mind, whispering their secrets, their horrors. Sometimes I wonder if they still call to me, waiting for my return.